people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
News. Okay, we'll start with this. Unbeaten up-and-comer in the women's featherweight division, Karriss Artingstall took to her social media and stated, "Fight news coming real soon." I don't know who Karriss is going to be fighting. I don't imagine it's for a major title of any kind, it being that all the full-fledged champions at this weight are spoken for. Amanda Serrano is en route to a Katie Taylor fight at 140. Sky Nicholson is en route to a Raven Chapman fight at 126. The IBF title, the newly vacated IBF title, that's going to be up for grabs in the upcoming Nina Menke versus Daniela Bermudez fight. That being said, all the major titles are spoken for, so I don't imagine that Karriss's next fight is going to be for a major title. In all likelihood, it's going to be another developmental fight, as Karriss Artingstall sports professional record of 6 wins with no losses, no draws, 1 recorded knockout. Karriss has the amateur experience, the amateur pedigree, the same as Sky Nicholson, but is nowhere near as further along. I've often talked about how Karriss seems to be taking her time, moving at a much slower pace than Sky, who's already a champion now. The way I see it, the winner of Menke versus Bermudez, whoever it is, whether it's Nina Menke or Daniela Bermudez, this is someone that Karriss Artingstall needs to get in the ring post-haste, ASAP.
Like yesterday.
A blue-chip prospect like a Karriss Artingstall should not be relegated to the background of a division, least of all when she fights on a major platform and has a major promoter behind her. That's not the way these things normally happen, but that is what's happening to Karriss. The focus of the conversation at featherweight is centered around Amanda Serrano, Sky Nicholson, and Raven Chapman, but Karriss
should be in the mix of that conversation, but she really isn't. She last saw action in January of this year, getting a head start, and you would have thought that she saw action again at least one more time by now.
That if she fought in January, she should have already fought again in either May or June to cap off the year with at least 3 fights and not just 2. The way things are looking here at summer's end, if she has some fight news pending, that means she'll probably fight in September, October, but that's just 2 fights. 2 fights in a calendar year.
For a 6-0 fighter?
And not just any 6-0 fighter. An amateur standout, an Olympian that fights on a major platform and is with a major promotional outfit. I think Karriss needs to be busier.
Karriss.
At this very early stage of her career, 2 years into it, when she's only 6-0, she should be fighting 3 to 4 times a year, and not just 1 or 2. She fought 3 times last year. She should be fighting 3 more this one. 3 more, maybe 4.
Karriss.
Context is key. This fighter debuted as a professional around the same time as Sky Nicholson, around the same time as Raven Chapman. Now, both of those fighters are already in world title contention. Sky is already a world champion. Karriss is far behind. She has a lot of catching up to do.
Karriss.
I like Karriss Artingstall, but this is not the position I expect to see an Olympian, a blue-chip prospect in 2 years into their pro career. 2 years in, I'm expecting to see a little bit more traction and a little bit more buzz. The conversation at featherweight is dominated by other fighters that don't even have the history with Sky Nicholson that Karriss has, because Karriss beat her in the amateurs. You think that more would be made of that?
That Ben Shalom would do more to use that as a promotional angle, a promotional tactic to build a fight between them. But as it stands, there really is no conversation about Artingstall versus Nicholson.
That's not really a hot button topic. The only one keeping it alive, I would say, is me.
Is this channel. I look forward to seeing Karriss Artingstall return to the ring because she's a quality operator. That can't be denied, but I can't help but think that she needs to fight more often. She's got some catching up to do with girls that started at the same starting point that she did.
Karriss.
for stateside, I guess it makes sense. Boots Ennis.
Yeah.
Last time we spoke, you talked about reaching out to Norman's team and looking to make that fight. What is the latest update?
Do you know what? Like, it's frustrating because you hear everything that Brian Norman Senior or his daddy's saying, and none of it really makes sense. Like, if this is a really simple situation. The first offer that was made to Brian Norman was nicely over $1 million. They said that they felt that, not insulting, but was nowhere near. We've made 2 more offers, $250,000 every time now, to levels that Brian Norman will never see. And it's like, we keep getting told we're close, then we go back and make another offer, and then we're told by his team that we're actually not that close. And I start to think, Brian Norman, do you want this fight, or are you clout chasing, or as the others might say over here, cap, or whatever it is?
Not sure if that works, but
not sure it is either. But it's like, do you want to be great, Brian Norman? Like, not being funny. Who is Brian Norman? I know Brian Norman's a good fighter, but no one knows who Brian Norman is. We're giving you a bucket load of money and an opportunity for you to unify the division against, in my opinion, one of the top pound-for-pound fighters in the world. Now, you say Boots is overrated. You say he's not the bogeyman. Then why wouldn't you take this bucket load of money to prove that you're the best welterweight in the world? So let's just stop with the interviews online. We've gone back 3 times now with more money. To a point, like, with all due respect to Brian Norman, he shouldn't be making this kind of money. But we're ready and we're prepared to pay him it. And then we get told, oh, you're miles off. It's like, we just saw an interview with this guy saying we're right close. We've just gone back with another $250,000, and now you're telling us we're miles away. So I don't believe the bullshit of Brian Norman and the team. If you want the fight, you would have taken the fight. And now, we're in a situation where the IBF, which is absolutely ridiculous, has ordered Trudezian to fight. The rematch. Listen, the kid's a good fighter. Boots has already beaten him. The IBF have got to stop with this. They're ruining boxing by ordering fights that people really don't want to see, especially when he's already beaten him. So we may vacate the belt and we may do something different because Boots has got to prove to the world how great he is. We may fight Trudezian and we might just get it out of the way.
A look at where we've been and what has already been said. Did you catch Eddie Hearn? Did you catch when he said that we offered him over $1 million, that the initial offer was worth over $1 million?
Well, that's not what Brian Norman is saying.
Of course it isn't, because anything involving American fighters, American-based fighters, always devolves into a case of he said, she said.
We had this off before it even get started with Eddie Hearn, so you can go on and stop the cap. Eddie Hearn, you trying to spend this? Check this out. The first offer was was less than a third of what Boots made for David Avanesian.
What does Boots' purse for David Avanesian have to do with you and your purse?
David Avanesian is only famous for getting beat by or getting knocked out by Bud. We was picking at David Avanesian. We was picking at his name and everything about David Avanesian before he fought Bud. Now all of a sudden David Avanesian is a name.
I don't know who said he was a name, but what he actually was a late replacement for Cody Crowley. That's all that was.
It's the same thing I said about everybody got to be attached to a person, then they become a name. All right. So now, your first offer was that, and it was literally just a little bit more than what you gave David Avanesian, and my son is a world champion. He brings to the table the exact same thing that Boots brings to the table.
Yeah, but Boots' team are the ones making the offer. Your team isn't. Your team, your promoter, Top Rank, isn't offering to do anything.
Boots doesn't bring anything more to the table than my son brings.
Yes, he does. He's bringing the money to the table. The money via Matchroom. The money that Top Rank isn't putting up for you.
It's a unification bout. He has his belt. My son has his belt. My son is taking all the chances. He's taking all the risks.
And Matchroom is taking all the chances, and they're taking all the risks because they're the only ones offering to pay for this fight. Not your people, not Top Rank.
You got it? So that's what you do. The second offer was less than half of what Boots made his last fight.
You guys are so focused on what Boots makes for his fights via Matchroom. What does that have to do with you?
The third offer was half of what Boots made his last fight.
I'm sorry, are you under the impression that you and Boots are on equal footing? Are you under the impression you're supposed to get what he gets?
That's what it sounds like.
To be exact, damn near. It was literally half of what Boots made his last fight. So imagine what Boots is going to make in this unification bout. Considerably more than he just made in his last fight.
Yeah, because his people are the ones paying for it, not yours. If you want that, why don't you tell Bob and Carl Moretti and Top Rank to foot the bill? Why don't they pay for the fight?
Because they know not to break the bank
for Brian Norman.
So, not speaking actual numbers, I'm speaking actual facts. You tell me I'm lying. That's what it was. You did not want to make this fight. The only reason you did this was to tell Boots and his team that you tried to make the fight. You did not make the fight. I gave Boza the numbers. I told Boza what the numbers was. Boza know that's some bullshit.
Is that dead then?
I think so, yeah. I mean, look, the IBF have called the purse bids for Chudazian, which is frustrating because we've already beat him. You know, the first offer that we made to Brian Norman was well north of $1 million.
Are you paying attention? Eddie says the initial offer was for over $1 million. This is for a guy who fought for $100,000 in his last fight.
Which, you know, I get people on Twitter go, I bet you offered him 300 grand. It's like, no. But anyway, they come back and went, that's an insulting offer. Well, we don't think so, but anyway. So we upped our offer by $250,000.
For those of you that are bad at math, $250,000 is $250,000. He's saying they added $250,000 to the offer.
And then they come back and said, oh, we're close. And Brian Norman's dad gives all these interviews saying, we're really close now. Like, this is, you know. So we went back for a third time with another $250,000, which I really didn't want to do, by the way. But I was like, look, if we're close, let's just get this fight done.
$250,000 adds up to $500,000. At this point, they have added $500,000 to the offer. And remember that the initial offer was already for over $1 million.
If he really wants it, let's find out. Fired it in, and they come back and said, oh, we're miles off. I said, what do you mean miles off? We were just close, and we've gone up, not down. No. And it's bullshit, you know. It's like, you talk about you want to create a legacy. You talk about you're the best in the world. You talk about Boots is a bogeyman in the division. But where are you going to see that kind of money? Like, with all due respect to Brian Norman, I think he's a good fighter. Who is Brian Norman?
Oh, indeed, because he's not a fighter that Top Rank overpays. No, he's not a fighter that Top Rank breaks the bank for. So why are they expecting Matchroom to break the bank for him?
Because they don't want to fight.
A lot of people overcomplicate things, overcomplicate these situations when it's a lot more simple than it looks. The reason you're asking for the moon and the stars is because you don't really want this thing. If you like your chances, you would take the career high payday. No, I don't expect you to take the very first offer, the first offer from Matchroom, but the third one should have got it done.
If you like your chances.
I saw veteran boxing scribe Jake Donovan say, as I said earlier this week, nothing but masturbation material for social media channels. People are going to believe what they want, but he just did his son a huge disservice. November 8th, Keyshawn Davis co-feature it is.
Wait, so he's going to be fighting in a co-main instead of a main?
And this is the guy that Matchroom is supposed to break the bank for. The same guy that Top Rank doesn't break the bank for, and they're the ones that actually promote him. Brian Norman Sr. was on the Boxing Voice earlier today, saying that the final offer for Matchroom was $1.7 million, not 1.5, 1.7, which is closer to $2 million.
If you round up.
Think about that. From $100,000 with Giovanni Santillan, $100,000 to close to $2 million? You don't think you're asking for too much?
The problem with American fighters.
Brian Norman Sr. then said that all they want is an extra $500,000, bringing their purse to $2.2 million total.
Do you remember what I told you in my previous video? Between the 2.2 that Brian Norman wants and the over $3 million that Jaron Boots Ennis gets, that would bring the pot to approximately $6 million, not counting other operational costs, which would result in this fight being billed as a pay-per-view. Do you think you should have to pay per view to see them?
Because there's not enough pay-per-views out there as it is.
What Brian Norman Sr. is proposing is that Jaron Ennis take a $500,000 pay cut to make the fight happen.
Wait, so you want him to take a pay cut when you won't even take a pay increase?
Think about it.
The final offer from Matchroom to the Normans was $1.7 million. $1.7 million is literally 17 times your highest purse. 17 times what you made to fight Giovanni, and that's not enough.
Brian Norman Sr. says on the Boxing Voice that extra $500,000 should come from Boots Ennis taking a pay cut to make it work.
Because 17 times your highest purse doesn't make it work? and you want us to believe that they're the ones in the wrong? Then why isn't Top Rank putting up the kind of money that you're looking for?
Why don't they?
Because they know not to. Top Rank isn't in the business of overpaying fighters and overpaying for fights. They avoid that as much as they can. So if your own promoter avoids that, why are you expecting Matchroom to do that? They're already overpaying you.
Offering to.
And it doesn't stop there. Brian Norman Sr. also said on the Boxing Voice that he would take Matchroom Boxing's final offer of $1.7 million if the fight was in Vegas, where the tax bill would be less, and not Philadelphia.
So let me see if I understand this. They're already offering you 17 times your highest purse. They're footing the bill. They're paying for everything to make it happen. You're paying for nothing.
And on top of that, you want to tell them where the fight should be. We will only take the last offer if they make us fight in Vegas. The last offer was $1.7 million. We need an extra $500,000 for the fight to happen in Philly. Ennis will never be an undisputed champion.
Per Brian Norman Sr.,
who says that Jaron Ennis will never be an undisputed champion, though neither will you, and not negotiating like this. Let's not kid ourselves. The Normans are not going to have any more luck getting a Montestanionis in the ring or Brian Norman in the ring than Boots had. No, they're not.
You ain't gonna get those fights either. You ain't gonna be undisputed either. The difference is you're not trying to be, because you don't want this fight.
What I've been saying. Don't overcomplicate the conversation mulling over the particulars when it's very obvious that the Normans are holding this fight to ransom for exorbitant amounts of money. They're holding it to ransom because they don't really want it. They can live without it. Even if it means boxing on a prospect's undercard. Even if it means playing second fiddle to Keyshawn Davis, who is not a champion.
They can live without it, because for them, it's too risky.
When you turn your nose up at $1.7 million from Matchroom, well, are you going to make that on a Keyshawn Davis undercard? We all know the answer. See, you just put a lot of pressure on yourself. Now, people are going to scrutinize who you're fighting in your next fight, how you're fighting, how you're looking, and what you're making.
Since $1.7 million wasn't enough,
they're going to look over at what you accept, what you accepted for your next fight.
You can't accept $1.7 million for Jaron Ennis, but you're willing to accept a lot less for some other guy. Why?
Because it's not as risky. Because you don't stand the same chance of losing. Underneath it all, the reason so many American fighters negotiate from a position of weakness is because they're afraid to lose. They don't really like their chances, no matter what they tell the interviewers, no matter what they say about how Boots ain't a boogeyman and he's overrated and this and that. If you really felt that way, the third offer would have got the fight done, and it didn't.
Unless you end up making $1.7 million in your next fight, and I don't think you're going to.
Why wouldn't you have taken that career high purse, close to $2 million, for a guy that you think is overrated, a guy who you don't think is a boogeyman?
Then go show us.
You won't, because you don't believe any of that shit you're saying. You're just faking it until you make it, like so many American fighters do these days, and that's all this is. I knew it was too good to be true.
I knew it.
Any and every conversation involving American fighters or American-based fighters seems to end the same way, devolving into a case of he said, she said.
That goes on for weeks, that goes on for months, and all the while, fights that need to happen don't happen. The divisions suffer for it, and the sport suffers for it.
Welcome to America.